My name is Ethan. And yeah, I know how this is going to sound. Like one of those stories you scroll past and think, there's no way someone didn't see it coming. But I didn't. Or maybe I did, and just chose not to look too closely. That night was supposed to mean something. Not just because it was my birthday, but because, in my head, it was going to be a reset. A pause. A moment where everything that had been quietly slipping between us would finally settle. I told myself it wasn't about the day. It was about us. I rented a small cabin by the lake. Not luxury, just the kind of place that feels intentionally quiet. Wooden walls, soft lighting, that faint smell of pine and water in the air. The kind of place where conversations feel heavier, more honest. I got there early. Earlier than I needed to. Because I wanted everything to be right. I strung up warm lights along the porch myself, even though the owner said I didn't have to. I adjusted them 3 different times until the glow felt soft instead of harsh. I set the table outside facing the water, where the reflection of the lights would ripple just slightly when the breeze hit. Details started to matter more than they should have. I kept thinking, if everything feels right, maybe we will too. I ordered food from her favorite place, the one she always said reminded her of. Before things got complicated. I didn't even question what that meant when she first said it months ago. I just remembered it. So I ordered everything she liked. Extra sauce. No onions. The exact drink she always got but pretended she didn't care about. I even brought a small speaker and built a playlist ahead of time. Songs she used to play in the car, back when she'd sing without thinking anyone was listening. Back when silence between us didn't feel loaded. And yeah, I had a gift. Nothing dramatic. No big statement. Just something thoughtful. Something that said, I still pay attention. I placed it under the table, hidden just enough so it wouldn't ruin the moment. Because in my head, there was going to be a moment. She was supposed to get there at 7. At 6:50, I checked my phone. At 6:58, I checked it again. At exactly 7 o'clock, I stood up without realizing it, like my body expected to see headlights pulling in. Nothing. 7:10, I told myself traffic. 7:20, maybe she stopped somewhere. 7:30, I sent a message. You close? No reply. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Not because I expected an answer right away, but because something about the silence felt familiar. Still, I pushed it down. I went back to adjusting things that didn't need adjusting. I fixed the napkins. Repositioned the plates. Checked the lights again. Anything to avoid just sitting there and waiting. By 7:45, I finally sat down. The music was playing softly in the background, but it felt almost out of place now, like it was performing for an empty room. I looked at the chair across from me and tried not to imagine it staying that way. 8 o'clock. The food had cooled slightly, so I reheated what I could. I told myself it didn't matter. We'd laugh about it later. She'd walk in, apologize, maybe kiss me on the cheek like she used to, and everything would feel normal again. That's what I kept telling myself. 8:20, still nothing. No message. No call. Just silence. That kind of silence that doesn't feel neutral, it feels intentional. I picked up my phone again, opened our chat, stared at it, then locked it without typing anything. Because I didn't want to sound needy. That's how it starts, right? You notice something off, and then you convince yourself reacting to it would somehow make you the problem. So I stayed quiet. 8:45. The candles had burned low enough that wax was starting to pool unevenly at the base. One of them flickered harder than the others, bending slightly in the wind. The ice in the glasses had melted completely. Watered down. Useless. I hadn't taken a single bite of food. The lake was darker now. The reflection of the lights stretched longer across the surface, breaking every time the water shifted. I remember thinking how calm everything looked, compared to how loud my thoughts were getting. And that's when it hit me. Not as panic. Not as anger. Just quiet clarity. She's not coming. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't even fully accept it. But it was there. Sitting in the back of my mind, steady and cold. 9 o'clock. I stopped checking my phone. Stopped adjusting things. Stopped pretending. I just sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me, listening to the water move in slow, repetitive waves. And then, headlights. Cutting through the dark, sweeping across the cabin walls. My body reacted before my mind did. I stood up again. Not excited. Not relieved. Just alert. Her car pulled in casually. No rush. No urgency. The engine turned off. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened. And she stepped out like this was just another night. No apology in her posture. No hesitation. She walked toward the cabin, pushed the door open, and stepped inside like she hadn't just left someone waiting for over 2 hours. She didn't look at me first. Didn't notice the table. Didn't notice the lights. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, like she was checking something off mentally, and then she just tossed her jacket onto the chair. Finally, she glanced at the setup. And said, "Relax, it's not that deep." With a slight smile. Like this was all unnecessary. Like I was. No. Happy birthday. No. Sorry I'm late. Nothing. And the craziest part? I didn't react. No anger. No questions. No scene. I just stood there for a second, nodded slightly like I understood something I hadn't even processed yet. Then I walked past her, opened the door, and stepped outside. Calm. Quiet. Controlled. But the truth is, something inside me didn't bend in that moment. It didn't hurt loudly. It didn't explode. It just broke. Clean. Permanent. And standing there in the dark, leaning against my car, staring out at the lake, I realized this night wasn't the beginning of something. It was the confirmation of everything I'd been trying not to see. I sat in my car longer than I needed to. Not because I was trying to calm down, but because I wasn't sure what I was feeling yet. It wasn't anger. That would have been easier. It was something quieter, heavier. Like everything I had ignored over the past few months suddenly lined up in perfect order, and for the first time, I couldn't pretend it was random. I rested my hands on the steering wheel and just stared ahead, replaying the night in my head, but not just the night. Everything. The late replies. The way her tone changed when I asked simple questions. The way she'd say, "You're overthinking it." Like that was supposed to end the conversation. Back then, I let it go. Every time. Because I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid one, the insecure one, the one who turns small things into problems. So I minimized it. Over and over again. But sitting there in the dark, I realized something I hadn't admitted before. It was never just one thing. It was patterns. And patterns don't lie. I thought about how she started staying over at her friend's place more often. At first, it made sense. They had plans, late nights, movies, whatever. Normal. But then it became frequent. Too frequent. And every time I asked, she had the same tone. Slightly annoyed. Like I was interrupting something by even asking. Why does it matter? That question stuck with me. Not because of what it meant, but because of how easily she said it. Like my concern was inconvenient. I remember one night specifically. She texted me at 1:30 a.m. Staying at Jenna's tonight. Too tired to drive. No call. No explanation. Just a statement. I stared at that message for a while. Typed out a reply. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Eventually, I just sent, "Okay." Because anything more would have turned into a discussion I wasn't ready to have. And that became a pattern too. Me, holding back. Her, pulling away. Then there was her phone. It used to just sit anywhere, table, couch, kitchen counter. Unlocked. Unimportant. But somewhere along the way, it changed. Face down. Always within reach. Screen lighting up, and her reacting instantly, but not in front of me. And if I happened to glance over? She'd tilt it slightly. Just enough. Subtle. But noticeable. At the time, I told myself it was nothing. Privacy. Everyone deserves that. Right. But now, replaying it, it didn't feel like privacy. It felt like distance. Like there was a part of her life that I wasn't allowed into anymore. And I didn't question it. That's the part that gets me. I adapted instead. Started pretending I didn't notice. Because noticing meant acknowledging. And acknowledging meant risking an answer I didn't want. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes for a second. More memories came up. Her being overly sweet out of nowhere. Random compliments. Unprompted affection. At the time, it felt like things were getting better. Like maybe I was wrong to worry. But now, it felt timed. Like she was balancing something. Too cold one day. Too warm the next. And I accepted both versions without asking why they existed. That's when the thought hit me. She's been living two different lives. And I've only been part of one of them. I opened my eyes and looked at the cabin through the windshield. The lights were still on. The table still set. Everything I had prepared, still sitting there like nothing had changed. Except everything had. I thought about going back in. About asking her directly. Just putting it all out there. But something stopped me. Not fear. Not hesitation. Just clarity. Because I already knew what she'd say. You're overthinking it. It's not that deep. Why are you making this a thing? And for months that worked. Because I allowed it to. I let her define what was real. What mattered. What didn't. But standing there now, I realize something simple. If something keeps bothering you, it's not small. It's just ignored. I exhaled slowly and ran a hand over my face. Then I stepped out of the car. The air felt colder than before. Or maybe I just noticed it now. When I walked back inside, she was sitting at the table. On her phone. Scrolling. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just walked into a night that clearly meant something to me and dismissed it in a single sentence. She didn't even look up right away. And that bothered me more than anything else. Not the lateness. Not the comment. But the indifference. I walked in slowly, watching her. Trying to see something familiar. Something real. But all I saw was someone comfortable. Too comfortable. Like she knew there wouldn't be consequences. Like she knew I wouldn't push. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to prove her wrong. I just felt done pretending. I didn't say anything. Didn't ask where she'd been. Didn't ask who she was with. I just stood there for a second, then moved past her. But this time, it wasn't avoidance. It was observation. Because now, I was paying attention. And once you start seeing things clearly, you can't unsee them. I didn't confront her right away. That would have been the old version of me, the one still hoping there was some angle, some explanation that would pull everything back into place. The version who believed that if I asked carefully enough, she'd finally tell me the truth. But by then, I had started to understand something ugly. Truth doesn't usually hide behind a lack of questions. It hides behind the wrong answers. So I stayed quiet. Not because I was scared of what she'd say. Because I was starting to think I already knew. She was still sitting there when I came back in, one leg folded under her, phone in hand, face lit by the screen. I noticed how relaxed she looked. Not apologetic. Not tense. Relaxed. Like being over 2 hours late to something I had clearly planned didn't even register as unusual. Like my silence had already done what it always did, made things easier for her. I walked into the kitchen area, opened the fridge, stared into it without really seeing anything, then closed it again. "Are you seriously sulking?" she asked. Her voice wasn't loud. It was almost amused. I turned and looked at her. Sulking? She shrugged, still holding her phone. You're doing that thing where you act calm so I'm supposed to feel bad. That hit me harder than I expected. Like she had reduced every real emotion I'd had into some manipulative pattern. Like disappointment was just a performance to her. I'm not acting, I said. She gave a small smile that never reached her eyes. Okay. That was it. Just okay. Like the conversation bored her before it even started. I looked at the table again. Cold food. Burned down candles. Melted ice. The gift still hidden where I'd put it, stupidly waiting for a version of the night that wasn't coming back. Then I noticed her bag. She had dropped it near the end of the couch, half open. A small thing. Ordinary. I tried not to look at it. Really, I did. But once suspicion stops being a passing thought and starts becoming structure, everything changes. Every object starts feeling like it might belong to a story you haven't been told yet. She got up and headed to the bathroom without saying anything else, phone still in hand. I heard the door close. Water running a second later. And before I could stop myself, I was already moving. I picked up the bag and set it on the table. For 1 second I just stood there with both hands on it, staring down, feeling that last little piece of resistance in me trying to speak up. The part that said, don't do this. If you look, you cross a line. If you find nothing, you become the problem. But another voice answered immediately. If there's nothing there, why are you afraid to look? So I opened it. Lip balm. Keys. A charger. A folded receipt near the bottom. Just one receipt. Plain white paper, slightly crumpled, easy to miss if you weren't looking for something. My fingers hesitated before unfolding it. Then I read it. 2 cocktails. 1 appetizer. 2 entrees. 2 desserts. Paid less than 3 hours earlier. The restaurant name sat at the top of the receipt like a punch to the throat. I knew that place because we had talked about going there together. Twice. It was one of those, sometime soon, places we never made time for. The kind you save for a good night. A meaningful night. A birthday, maybe? I read the receipt again, slower this time, like maybe the second pass would change the words. It didn't. Table for 2. Dessert for 2. Everything for 2. I stared at the total at the bottom, absurdly focused on that for a second, because the alternative was omitting what the rest of it meant. Then the bathroom door opened. I didn't move. She stepped out drying her hands on a paper towel, saw me standing by the table, saw the receipt in my hand, and stopped. Not dramatically. Just a slight pause. A single break in her expression. Then it was gone. What are you doing? She asked. I placed the receipt flat on the table between us. No idea, I said. You tell me. She looked at it, then back at me. For half a second I saw it, calculation. Not guilt first. Not fear first. Calculation. And somehow that was worse. Oh my God! She said with a short, breathy laugh. Seriously? I didn't answer. She crossed her arms. You went through my bag? Still I said nothing. Because at that point, whether I had or hadn't wasn't the question anymore. She knew it. I knew it. So I just tapped the receipt once with my finger. Who were you with? She looked away first. Toward the window. Then toward the counter. Anywhere but at me. It was work. Work, I repeated. Yes, she said, a little sharper now. A coworker and I grabbed dinner after talking. It ran late. That's it. I nodded once. And the 2 cocktails? She exhaled through her nose. Ethan, are you serious right now? Yes. That seemed to throw her off more than anger would have. She stared at me, waiting for the old version, the one who'd get louder, get emotional, let her redirect the conversation. But I wasn't giving her that anymore. It was just a coworker, she said again. We were talking about work. At a place we were supposed to go together. Her jaw tightened. So now I need your permission to eat somewhere? No, I said. Just asking why you spent my birthday at dinner for two. That landed. I saw it in her face. A brief flicker. Not remorse. Recognition. She hadn't forgotten what day it was. That made it worse. She uncrossed her arms and picked up the receipt like she could take control of the conversation by touching it. You're twisting this. I'm reading it. It's not what you think. There it was. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. Then help me out. She set the receipt down harder than necessary. It was complicated. I remember that sentence exactly. Not because it clarified anything. Because it did the opposite. Complicated. Not false. Not innocent. Complicated. I looked at her for a long second and felt something settle in me, not a burst of anger, not even heartbreak yet. Just the end of doubt. Because suspicion needs room to breathe. It lives in gaps, in uncertainty, in maybe. But the truth? Sometimes it announces itself in the things people refuse to deny. You could have just told me, I said. Her expression changed then. Softer for a moment. It's not that simple. I shook my head. No. It actually is. She opened her mouth, probably to start building something, some careful arrangement of words designed to drag this back into gray territory where nothing could be pinned down. But I was already done listening. I picked up the receipt again, folded it once, and slipped it into my pocket. Ethan. No, I said quietly. And I meant it. No more half-explanations. No more letting tone replace truth. No more pretending my instincts were some flaw I needed to manage. I wasn't standing there with a theory anymore. I was standing there with proof that on the one night she should have known exactly where she was supposed to be, she chose to be somewhere else. With someone else. Smiling, drinking, ordering dessert, while I sat by a lake waiting for a version of us that she had clearly already left behind. She stepped closer. You're making this bigger than it is. That might have worked on me earlier. But not then. Not after the receipt. Not after the look on her face when she saw I had it. I backed away from the table, to make space. And for the first time that entire night, I stopped hoping she'd fix it with the next sentence. Because somewhere between unfolding that paper and hearing, "It's complicated," I understood something for real. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't overthinking. I was late to the truth. And once that truth finally reaches you, it changes the sound of everything that comes after. It stayed with me. That night didn't end with a fight. That's the part that still feels strange when I think about it. No yelling. No doors slammed. No dramatic. "We're done." Just silence. The kind that settles in after something important finally clicks into place. She stayed in the cabin. Moved around like nothing had fundamentally changed, like the conversation we just had was just another bump, something temporary, something we'd smooth over like we always did. At one point, she even asked if I was going to eat. Like the night hadn't already told me everything I needed to know. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my keys, told her I'd be back later, and walked out again. This time, I didn't go to the car right away. I just stood there for a second, breathing in the cold air, trying to understand what exactly I was feeling. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't confused anymore. For months, everything felt unclear. Mixed signals. Half answers. That constant tension between what I saw and what I was told. But now, it was simple. Too simple. She wasn't where she said she was. She wasn't who she said she was. And the version of her I had been holding on to? That version didn't exist anymore. I drove without thinking about where I was going. No music. No destination. Just empty roads and a mind that wouldn't stop replaying everything. Not just tonight. Everything. Her laugh when I asked too many questions. The way she'd flip things back on me. "How come you don't trust me?" Like trust was something you were supposed to give blindly, not something built through consistency. And I realized something else too. She didn't start acting like this overnight. I just noticed it too late. When I finally got back to the cabin, it was close to midnight. The lights were still on. She was asleep on the couch. Phone still in her hand. That alone should have told me something. Because she never used to fall asleep like that. Never. Her phone used to be the last thing she'd put down. Now it was the one thing she never fully let go of. I stood there for a second, just watching her. Trying to match this version of her with the one I knew. And I couldn't. Not anymore. That disconnect, it was real now. Not a feeling. Not a fear. A fact. I walked over slowly and picked the phone out of her hand. She shifted slightly but didn't wake up. For a second, I just held it. Not unlocking it. Not searching. Just holding it like it was heavier than it should be. Because I knew. Once I crossed that line, there was no going back. No more. Maybe. No more benefit of the doubt. Just truth. And the truth doesn't come in pieces. It comes all at once. I unlocked it. Same passcode. She hadn't even changed it. That almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it showed how confident she was that I wouldn't look. Or maybe, how little she thought I would. I opened her messages. At first, nothing obvious. Group chats. Work threads. Random notifications. Normal. Too normal. Then I saw it. A second account. Different app. One I didn't recognize at first. No profile picture. No name I knew. Just something hidden in plain sight. I opened it. And that's when everything stopped being abstract. His name was Logan. I didn't know him. At least not from anything she'd ever told me. But the messages? They weren't new. They went back weeks. No. Months. Long conversations. Inside jokes. Photos. Not explicit, but personal. Too personal. The kind of tone you don't use with someone who's just a coworker. I scrolled slowly. My chest felt tight, but not in a panicked way. More like something inside me was compressing. Becoming smaller. Colder. More controlled. She told him things she hadn't told me in months. About her day. About how she felt. About being drained. About needing something real. I stopped on one message. Him. Does he suspect anything? Her. No. He trusts me. I stared at that longer than anything else. Not the flirting. Not the tone. That. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was awareness. She knew exactly what she was doing. And she knew exactly what I believed. I kept scrolling. And then I found the voice memo. It was short. Just a few seconds. I don't know why I pressed play. Part of me wishes I hadn't. Her voice came through the speaker, softer than usual. Casual. Detached. I told him I loved him just to shut him up. A pause. A small exhale. It's easier that way. I didn't move. Didn't react. Didn't even blink. Because in that moment, everything became clear in a way I wasn't ready for. She wasn't confused. She wasn't figuring things out. She wasn't caught between two emotions. She was managing two realities. And I wasn't even the complicated part. I was the convenient one. The stable one. The one who waited. Who planned. Who believed. Logan. He got everything else. I locked the phone and set it back in her hand exactly how I found it. Carefully. Precisely. Like none of it had happened. She shifted again but didn't wake up. And I just stood there, looking down at her. Not angry. Not emotional. Just done. Because there's a moment when betrayal stops hurting the way you expect. It stops being sharp. Stops being loud. And instead, it becomes quiet. Final. Like a door closing in a place you didn't even realize you were still standing in. I walked outside again. Same cold air. Same lake. Same night. But this time, everything felt different. Because I wasn't trying to understand what was happening anymore. I understood. And that changed everything. I didn't confront her the next morning. That probably sounds strange. If you've ever been in a situation like this, you'd expect an explosion. Questions. Accusations. That need to drag everything into the open and force it to make sense. But I didn't feel that anymore. Because the truth is, once you hear something like that voice memo, you stop needing explanations. You stop needing closure from them. You already have it. She woke up like nothing had happened. Stretched. Checked her phone. Gave me a quick morning, like we were just two people sharing space, not standing in the middle of something that had already ended. And I matched her energy. Calm. Neutral. Distant. Not cold enough to raise suspicion. Just different enough to start pulling away. You heading out early? She asked, grabbing a bottle of water. Yeah, I said. Got stuff to handle. She nodded like that made perfect sense. No follow-up questions. No curiosity. That told me something too. She wasn't worried about losing me. Because in her mind, she already had me. That's what I understood now. I wasn't competing. I was secured. Predictable. And for the first time, I decided not to be. I left the cabin before she did. Not because I needed space. Because I needed distance. There's a difference. Space is emotional. Distance is strategic. And somewhere between that night and that morning, I stopped reacting. And started observing. The first thing I checked wasn't her phone again. It was our shared accounts. Not because I was expecting something dramatic, but because patterns leave traces. And people don't think about those traces when they're busy managing two lives. At first, everything looked normal. Groceries. Gas. Subscriptions. Then I noticed it. Small transfers. Nothing big enough to trigger attention. But consistent. Same amount. Same frequency. Different recipient. I stared at the name. Logan. No last name. Just that. I leaned back in the chair and let that settle. Because money changes things. Flirting can be denied. Messages can be explained away. But money? Money is intention. It means effort. It means planning. It means this wasn't just emotional. This was investment. I didn't react. Didn't take *TS. Didn't rush into anything. I just noted it. Because at that point, I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was building a full picture. Later that day, I went back through older transactions. That's when it got worse. It wasn't new. It had been happening for a while. Weeks. Maybe longer. Just hidden well enough to blend into everything else. I closed the app and sat there for a minute, staring at nothing. Not shocked. Not even angry. Just confirming what I already knew. She wasn't slipping. She was consistent. Deliberate. Controlled. And that made it easier in a strange way. Because accidents are messy. But patterns? Patterns are clear. That same afternoon, I went back to the cabin to grab the rest of my things. She wasn't there. Which didn't surprise me. But something else did. Her charger was still plugged in. But her bag was gone. That meant she left in a hurry. Or, she left intentionally without planning to come back right away. I stood there for a second, just taking in the silence of the place. Everything looked the same as the night before. But it didn't feel the same. Not even close. I walked around slowly, not really looking for anything specific. Just noticing. And that's when I found it. A parking stub. Folded near the edge of the counter. Different city. Not far, but far enough to matter. Date, 2 days before my birthday. Time late. I picked it up and turned it over. No explanation. No reason for her to be there. At least none she ever told me. And that's when something shifted again. Because now it wasn't just about Logan. It was about the timeline. The layers. How long this had been running without me even realizing I was already outside of her real life. I put the stub in my pocket without thinking. Then I left. But instead of going home, I drove there. Same city. Same parking structure. It didn't take long to find the place. Because once you're looking for something specific, you start noticing details you normally wouldn't. There was a small motel nearby. Nothing special. The kind of place people don't ask questions at. I sat in the car across the street for a while, just watching. Not expecting anything. Just confirming the possibility. And even though I didn't see her that day, I didn't need to. Because everything already lined up. The timing. The receipt. The messages. The transfers. The stub. It wasn't one thing. It was all of it. Working together. Like pieces of something that had been built slowly. While I was still trying to hold on to something that had already been replaced. I drove back in silence. And somewhere along the way, I realized something important. This wasn't about catching her anymore. This wasn't about confrontation. Or proving anything. Because the truth didn't need to be proven. It was already complete. What mattered now was what I was going to do with it. And that's where everything changed. Because most people, when they reach this point, they react. They explode. They confront. They try to force the other person to feel what they're feeling. But I didn't want that. Not anymore. I didn't want her guilt. I didn't want her explanation. I didn't even want her regret. I wanted something else. Control. Not over her. Over myself. Over how this ended. Because for months, maybe longer, I had been reacting to her behavior. Adjusting. Accommodating. Waiting. But now I was done waiting. That night, when she texted me, "Where are you?" I didn't answer right away. Not out of spite. Not to play games. But because for the first time, I didn't feel the urgency to respond. And that alone told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't losing her. I had already lost her. What I was holding on to was just the version of her that no longer existed. And once you accept that, you stop trying to fix things. You start planning your exit. Quietly. Carefully. Completely.